inside the wrapper, which is wonderful.
But they have a lavender one, and
That's
a
not
chili
mint.
one, and
That's
an
not mint.
orange
That's,
one. But they all have different names.
Yeah, yeah, and they're like $4 a bar.
And I've just seen them in different like shops. And
Yep,
stuff.
yep,
It's
yep.
not necessarily any one place. So not even in candy stores, but those I like. But I think that chocolate and what's being done with chocolate recently is fun and exciting. But it's kind of like how you treat one. You know, it's like you got different things, and it's like it's becoming like this thing. You know, you have to have a tasting for chocolate, you know, a chocolate tasting, and it's almost like, I don't know, food too much.
In some ways, you know, I'm such a conservative in some ways, and you know, or traditionalist.
I would never say you were conservative.
Well, you know, in traditionalist. So
Yeah.
you know, in terms of food, you know, wines I don't like. I don't like flavored beers. I like straight beer or straight ale. You know, not with a bunch of stuff added to it. I like wines. I like straight wines. I don't like flavored wines. There are very few flavored chocolates that I like. I like a pure chocolate. I like a good dark chocolate. I like a good milk chocolate. I don't like any foo-foo chocolate. So that way
Well, that's the thing, and it has to be a good one. It's not, I'm sorry,
I thought
but
you said you're not.
Hershey's,
That's
I
Hershey's.
find
I said I'm having dessert or fruit.
You can have
No
that
dessert,
with
but
fruit. No, that's
it's not
with
very
fruit.
good.
That's
It's
not
very
big.
high quality.
Chinese chocolate ranks up there among the worst in the world.
Yeah. Well, they're candy anyways. That Chinese
Well,
candy, isn't it?
some of the Chinese candy isn't bad because their idea of candy is very different than ours, and it's more like a honey base or a sesame base or whatever. And actually, I don't mind that because it's a little bit of sweet without being too sweet. But Chinese chocolate, I find, I mean, at least the ones I've had, ugh. And I find Hershey's right up there because I
With
find it
Chinese
grainy,
chocolate?
and I find it just ew. But, and I read a book one time on the history of chocolate in America. I found it at some rummage sale. It kind of read like somebody's thesis, but it was very
Probably
interesting.
was.
Yeah, it probably was. But it was very interesting because it talked about the business of chocolate in America. And when Hershey first developed his milk chocolate, the chocolatiers that were mostly European, that were in the United States, spread rumors about him that he was using spoiled milk in it. Because nobody had ever been able to make a milk chocolate prior to Hershey, because it always coagulated funny. And they couldn't figure out how to get the milk to blend with the chocolate. And he was the first one to do it. And so then they started spreading rumors about him that it was spoiled. Well, you know, he had this vision and made it come to fruition, and that was a wonderful feat and all that. But, you know, and then they spoke about people's taste in chocolate around the world, and what the Italians think is good chocolate, and what the British think is good chocolate, and what Americans think is good chocolate. And I found out that I need to live in Italy because of the Italian chocolate.
Italy has a lot of good stuff: coffee, chocolate, wine.
Although you know, there are times when a Hershey bar just for me was just a great thing.
In a s'more, it's fine. To eat it by itself, ew. I can't.
To me, though, Hershey did something that I found spectacular. My parents didn't buy a lot of sweets. I mean, we just didn't have. We didn't have candy bars. We didn't have pop. We didn't have a lot of stuff.
No, we didn't.
But I remember, like, with cold lunch, there was this girl. She sat next to me. Her name was Lenore. Every day she had a Hershey bar.
Oh my gosh.
And I would watch her break off each little square, and it looked so fantastic. And you know, just because how they market those to break off those squares, that was brilliant. And because
it was,
you know,
and that was a marketing thing. It really was a marketing.
And
thing.
it was brilliant. I remember being just like sucked into the vortex of looking at each one of those squares and lusting after it, sort of, you know. Because in my thing, I had half a banana, I had a sandwich, and I might have had about 4 orange things, and maybe a handful of raisins. That's what I had. I didn't have a Hershey, and I didn't even have a whole orange. Some kids had a whole orange. I only had a part of an orange. And but the big thing that I remember watching was each square.
She didn't share any of it.
I didn't. But I can visit. And to this day, I hate them. I hate Hershey bars. I eat some, but they're not my favorite.
Yeah.
That's probably why I like dark chocolate.
But
The Nord Colby was for me.
Oh, well, I had the Hershey like special dry open things where they have the blueberries or pomegranate.
Oh, yeah.
And that I like.
Milton Hershey
Is Mennonite.
wasn't Mennonite.
Oh, was.
No, he's dead. Yeah. So.
Right.
But,
Was
yeah,
excommunicated.
No, he wasn't shunned or anything like that. And then from the Pennsylvania, that first group or that very early group of Mennonites that came over here, and to this day, the profits, it's still a privately held company.
Yes, it is.
And all the profits that don't go into maintaining the company go into this this private school for disenfranchised boys. And it's like chocolate in the chocolate factory, this little Hershey town where this place is so enormously wealthy. So that's I believe.
And I don't think that he did it because of this, but when he did that, it was an answer also to people that were criticizing him for making a name for himself. And I mean, he had been a business failure.
Because he used his name.
But he used his name, and he had this success.
Because it's the Hershey bar, it's not chocolate bar.
Right, and he had this success, and so a lot of people were criticizing him for that, and they didn't want him to have an angle on the market. And so then they would criticize him about other things too, and he started putting his profits into things like, helping disadvantaged youth. Then he hired people that were orphans and things like that. For a long time, he only hired orphans for certain positions and whatever. Like I said, it wasn't his answer to that, because I think that's just who he was. But it kind of helped his image in the country, that this is what he was doing.
I think so also, but it goes back to James, like, if you must have a religion, take care of orphans and widows.
Yeah. And keep yourself from being spoiled by it.
Yeah.
But in Mennonite circles, there's also almost a bias against people making too much of a name for themselves.
Yeah.
And so he might have been getting flack.
Oh, come on.
There it is.
Did they change it? I mean, I'm looking at, when we go to Canada, there's all these Mennonites, and they all know, oh, the Cron name, oh, the Bloop name, oh, the Reimer name, oh, the Rubaba. Everybody is like exalted and happy that they even know somebody from that Mennonite family who has made a name for themselves.
And yeah, there's a
There is that.
Yeah, there's a problem in that. There's an internal
huge problem, and they name drop like, no. Oh yes, we know the Reimers, we know the Boobabas, the Deebaba, the Boobaba, the Friesens. Come on.
Yeah, but at the same time, if somebody
it's
is
almost too proud.
Yes, if somebody is too self-proud, it's okay to have pride in others. But
if you name your invention after yourself.
Yes, or.
But they all use their name. They all use their name.
Okay.
Friesen Publishing is Friesen Publishing.
Okay, I'm just describing something to you. Okay.
Whether I want to get it or not.
Well, whether there are internal contradictions, I'm saying that there's a problem, because there is this bias against people who, because not everybody gets glory, gets praise. It's not like, Howard Hughes, yes, you're a man, you're a hero, or Donald Trump, yeah. There's okay, well, good. It's nice to know him. He's kind of full of himself. Like that. When we were walking to the cancer ward, when my dad was having his operation, okay, well, that's this one Mennonite guy named this after himself. He should have really just given the money anonymously instead of putting his name on. Well, it's okay, But so it's not. There's no purity there. This is just a little. you know, so I can see where Mr. Hershey might have gotten some flack from his local community for, but not that, nobody
See,
would have, everybody would have been
I
very
mean, yeah.
happy to know